Hello and welcome to this next episode of the Deep Penetration Podcast. If this is your first time joining, then welcome. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Danny and I am a love and self-esteem coach. And I primarily work with individuals in the LGBTQ plus community, but this is an all-inclusive podcast and YouTube and all of those things. You know, for me, I think education and just general understanding is necessary in all communities. So if you are here and you would not consider yourself part of the LGBTQ plus community, like I said, welcome anyways. I'm sure there's somebody in your life that you know. And if you are part of the community, then I hope you find this podcast and this channel to be resourceful and informative and helpful for you to just navigate all aspects of your life, right? So anything that has to do with just individual self-development, romantic relationships, friendships, family relationships and dynamics, whatever the case may be, we will cover everything on this podcast and this channel. And the reason for why it's called Deep Penetration, and I know that you guys hear me say this every single episode, but you never know, there might be somebody new who's listening, is because, one, I like a good pun. And I'll say that a million times over and over and over again. I feel like eventually I'm just not going to have to say that anymore. But I like a good pun. And number two, I like to get to the root of stuff, right? Very inquisitive in that way. And I really like to understand like the mechanics of things and why things are the way that they are. Granted, not every single episode is going to be this like deep, enlightening episode. There will be definitely episodes that are just kind of more surface and just really understanding and navigating particular situations within relationships and life. So if we're talking about infidelity, general communication, conflict resolution, all of that stuff. But other episodes will definitely be much deeper, you know, unpacking the stereotypes, unpacking phobias within the community itself, which actually I don't even like the term phobia when it comes to these things. So for example, like biphobia, phobia basically just means like a fear of something. I don't think that really explains what that term just doesn't really make sense to me. I think it's more so marginalization and stereotyping and discrimination. But anyways, we will get to all of that stuff in other episodes. But for this episode in particular, we are talking about getting to the root of infidelity. Now that I think about it, I feel like I'm doing like a little mini series on infidelity because the last two episodes that I've done have specifically been on infidelity. So let's just call this a mini series. Those two previous episodes, we talked about if you were the person who was cheated on. The other episode was if you were the person who cheated. And this one is about getting to the root of the infidelity in general. Now, what I have come to find over my years of being a relationship coach, and I have coached many people over the past few years. I've worked with heterosexual couples, same-sex couples, you name it. And oftentimes, one of the primary issues that leads to infidelity is a dissatisfaction within the relationship to whatever degree that may be, right? And I think it's very important that when we say, let's get to the root of the infidelity, what that means is that we have to identify the issues within the relationship that caused the infidelity to occur. Now, let me be clear. Infidelity is a choice. You are actively making a choice to step outside of the relationship and partake in a dynamic or an affair, a relationship with somebody else. And therefore, that action is going to result in either the breaking down of your relationship, it's going to inflict harm on your partner, but it's also going to inflict harm on yourself, especially if that action does not align with your core values. So there's a plethora of reasons for why, you know, infidelity occurs. It's a complex issue. And there are so many different underlying reasons, right? So that may include emotional dissatisfaction, lack of communication, poor impulse control, drug and alcohol use, unresolved childhood trauma. The list goes on and on and on and on. But if we are going to just stick to the getting to the root of the infidelity, it's going to require very open, honest, transparent, and candid conversation with yourself and with your partner, which means reflection is key. And I say this so often, I feel like we live in a society or in a world where like reflection is really no longer a part of what we do on a daily basis because everything is so go, 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 go. And there's like not even a second in the day for you to take a moment for yourself. So prioritizing time in the day to sit back and reflect on where the relationship went wrong, why you are dissatisfied, why you got to that place, the things that you did to attempt to try and reconcile that or communicate with your partner and it just didn't really feel like it worked if you did, and then have that open and candid conversation with your partner if they are willing to have that conversation with you, right? So it's very important that both people come to the table if you are wanting to reconcile the relationship and have that very open dialogue. It's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard. And usually when that happens, I like to implement certain rules, conflict resolution rules, right? Just general argument rules where, so for example, any cussing is not, well, let me put it this way. Disrespecting your partner during that conversation should not be allowed because that's not going to really get you anywhere. Yes, the act in and of itself of cheating is disrespectful, but if you were trying to move past that, understand the reason for why, and repair or reconcile the relationship, disrespecting your partner is not going to get you anywhere, right? So having a very open, honest, and candid conversation with your partner about what happened. The main part of getting to the root of the infidelity is understanding how you work emotionally. When is the last time that you checked in with yourself? Are you even aware of the emotions that you experience on a day-to-day basis? Can you identify those emotions? Do you understand where the root of those emotions come from? Because oftentimes they come from experiences in our lives. Emotions in general are there from day one, right? When we are born. But the experiences that we have in life attach themselves to specific emotions, right? Or vice versa. So when we are feeling dissatisfied in our relationship, when we are feeling, let's say, for example, a lack of desire, we don't feel like our partner desires us. Are we communicating that to our partner or are we seeking validation somewhere else? And if you are seeking validation somewhere else, does that mean that you have a tendency of being avoidant when it comes to conflict because you're afraid that if you tell your partner that you do not feel desired, that they are going to, have a negative opinion about that. You're going to make them feel bad. They're going to make you feel bad. So you'd rather just not have the conversation and go seek that validation somewhere else. But realistically speaking, what you are doing in that moment is that you are actually self-sabotaging because you're creating a much bigger issue for yourself down the road. So again, a lot of this involves self-reflection and self-understanding and really being empathetic with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm actually going to prioritize and take the time to understand me. Because if you are able to understand you, then that allows your partner to understand you better, right? The one thing that I tell people all the time is how the hell do you expect your partner to know who you are if you don't even know who you are? That's a big part of it. That's a huge piece to the puzzle. So being very real with yourself and trying to understand why it happened in the first place. The other part of this is once you're able to identify what happened, are you going to put the effort and the energy into changing those things, into maybe modifying certain behaviors that you have identified as being negative and keep those in the forefront of your mind as you go through your days and your weeks and your months, right? Because in general, even if the relationship with your partner doesn't work out, it's good to have that awareness and that knowledge anyways. It's good to identify the negative behaviors and try to change them, try to work on them. That's self development. And realistically, we continue to learn and grow until the day we die. So, putting in that work now may actually have a positive effect on you and your next relationship that you are probably going to have. Um, I'm going to say something that, is probably going to be a little bit controversial, but I feel like it's incredibly true. The problem with infidelity within relationships, particularly in the queer community, is that it's almost been like normalized, right? It's not that it's a great experience when it happens for the individual, right? So for you, that subjective experience is going to suck, but it's almost kind of been normalized. And a lot of that has to do with like the hypersexuality around the community and what is intrinsically kind of part of the culture. And look, for me, I'm a huge proponent of self-expression and embracing who you are and really embracing your sexuality. And if you want to have that experience, go for it. There shouldn't be anybody who tells you that you can't or judges you or criticizes you for it. But sex is almost like a rite of passage in the queer community. And a lot of that is attached to just general repression that we experience and have experienced for years. So when we finally come out and when we finally have the ability to be who we want to be, and all these fantasies that we've created in our mind over an extended period of time, we actually get to live those things out. But what ends up happening is that we become dependent on that validation and that acceptance and all of those things, right? So it's a very complex issue, and that's not going to be unpacked on this one episode. But I say all of that to say, infidelity is as much of an issue as it is within the relationship. It's also very normalized in the community. There are so many times where I speak with clients and they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm really struggling with this, with, my partner cheating on me or me cheating on my partner. And whenever I have conversations with my friends and all these things, there's always the same generic response of, oh, it's fine, get over it, just move on, or just find somebody else, or, cheating is not that big of a deal. Like, look how many people are in open relationships. Like, just like that way of looking at it dismisses the personal experience and almost classically conditions us to feel like, oh, okay, well, this is normal, so let's continue to perpetuate that cycle. So I totally feel like I went off the rails on that one, but that's totally fine because that's what a podcast is about. But I was saying all of that to circle back to the point of infidelity is a very subjective experience, and therefore the process of getting to the root of the infidelity will also be a individual subjective experience. And then the two people should come together and have very open, candid, authentic, transparent communication about each person's findings. Yes, that also means that the person who was cheated on should have that moment of self-reflection and unpacking and trying to understand what went wrong within the relationship that led to the infidelity itself as well. And if there is any part of you that contributed to the breakdown of the relationship. But if there's two things that I have to narrow this down to when it comes to getting to the root of the infidelity, right? So number one, it is being very real with yourself and asking yourself the difficult questions. Why am I in this position? Why did I cheat? Why did I feel like this was the only alternative? So again, asking yourself the super tough questions. And then the second thing is just being totally transparent, honest, and communicative with your partner, because in that exchange, it's possible that there may be things that come up that you were unaware of or aware of and just kind of tucked away into your subconscious mind that come back up to the surface, and you're able to deal with those things in real time in that moment, right? Gaining different perspective, allowing yourself to be empathetic and put yourself in your partner's shoes. All of that is part of the process of getting to the root of the infidelity. But again, I feel like for myself, what I find to be the most important is that self-reflection and really thinking about your past relationships. Have you been hurt in them? What your experience has been in them, your childhood experience, how that contributed to your view of yourself and your identity and how you navigate relationships in your life, and within the community itself. I hope you guys found that helpful. I hope, you found some of that information to be informative. Sometimes I have a tendency of going off the rails and going into a completely different subject. So bear with me. I always try to get back to the point. But again, I think that's part of the unpacking process and communication and working through these issues and talking about these issues. Hopefully soon, I will have other people on the podcast with me. I would love to invite very specific guests and just guests in general. But I have a list of people in mind that I would like to bring on the podcast, and that is my goal for 2023 to make that happen. So if you found this information helpful, if you are enjoying this podcast, please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. It helps the channel and the podcast itself, and I greatly appreciate it. And again, whether you are listening or you are watching, I want to welcome you. I want you to leave a comment. I love interacting with you guys. It's what brings me life, and this is what I do. This is what I do for a living. If you feel like you need support or if you feel like you need help, I have created an entire course on navigating and managing infidelity, and I will put that information in a link down below. And again, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you on the next episode of Deep Penetration. You're not going to want to miss it.